Well, this is exciting. Welcome around the work stand. Welcome back around the work stand, Ryan.
Ryan.
It's so fun to be here. You two are doing a great job. It's just fun to be a part of the vibe you're setting.
Well, we
The
missed you.
Yes, the vibes are good, but the vibes are even better now.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
so
we're
nice
going to
of
have
you.
you, hopefully, if things go well, we'll have you here once a month, right?
I think so. Yeah, this year is a big. We're putting a lot of attention into data this year, and the market seems to be turning the corner in interesting ways. And I think a lot of the narrative out in the market is still focused on kind of the doom and gloom and the challenges. And I think so. I want to be able to talk about what are the bright spots that we're seeing in our network. And so, yeah, if I can join periodically to talk about that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I think that'd be wonderful.
Yes, we'll be kind of looking at some, market insights, kind of talking big pictures, giving retailers maybe some action items, look at some things that they can control and all that good stuff, and also just making sure that we're addressing questions straight from the retailers.
Yeah, that's a big hope. Is if our clients or even non-clients will just if there are things top of mind, transparency is really important to us, and we want to make sure that we're answering whatever questions you might have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, in general, 2023, what was the year like from a dollar sales perspective?
I think, all things considered, it was a relatively strong year. Comparing 2023 to 2022, there was a drop. So it was a 4% drop in total dollar volume. But, I think, there's obviously still on the downswing from COVID highs. Comparing it to pre-pandemic levels, it was up 7% over 2019. And that's $1 billion of additional growth. Now, the growth that the market performance in terms of dollars did outperform units. So the average selling price of bikes was higher. And so, the market is driven by dollar growth. And so that's a good thing. But in terms of the size of the bike market, we don't like seeing the unit quantity drop. But that higher average selling price, some people point to inflation as a driver of that, but what we see in the numbers is actually the assortment of bikes that are selling. So electric bikes now make up 20% of all dollar sales in the bike category in the IBD space.
Wow.
And so that's really driving dollar growth.
Yeah. So within those, the we're talking about probably e-bikes. Where are road bikes? Because I'm an old roadie, and it seems like there's actually everybody talks about less road bike sales. Now it seems like it's more e-bike, gravel bike, mountain bike. But where are road bikes? Are we still in there?
Well, road bikes are still, I think, number one, or they're in the top three in terms of dollar volume for the industry. And within certain categories, what we call sport performance. It actually performed really well over the last year. And especially when we kind of narrow the focus down to this last several months. And so, if we look at December through February, which are, the most recent full month results as we're recording, sport performance road bikes are showing some significant dollar growth. And so it's shaping up to be a pretty positive category for retailers this year. Now, driving those sales is discounting. So, that's driving the volume clearly, but that is still leading to average selling price going up. So I think the discounts are really working. And so that's a key takeaway is consumers seem to be entering the market in a category where there are good deals to be had. And they're using those deals to get a higher performing bike for their dollars. And so that's a really positive impact for dealers versus kind of what's commonly perceived as the negative of discounting, which is it can drive down margins or send the wrong message to consumers. But for right now, what we want is dollars in the door.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's kind of just thinking about road bikes or sport performance in general, if there's kind of I feel like there's been a lot of innovation over the past, I guess, released to the consumer over the past, 2 years, 18 months. But also culturally, I think road racing is kind of in a little bit of a different spotlight than it has been in quite some time with, like the Netflix series following the Tour de France. So there's more people kind of aware of it in general. I wonder if that's kind of making an impact on the industry.
I've got to think so. I think that
I hope
paired with,
so.
yeah, and riding road bikes is fun. I think gravel, like sometimes the market like trends, all kind of steadily go in a single direction. So like on the whole, mountain bikes have steadily grown over the last 25, 30 years. But different categories within mountain bikes have fluctuated in that time. And I think drop bar is kind of the same way. Gravel, it's not that gravel is not, it's not necessarily going anywhere, but if it's been the key driver of sales and participation in recent years, ridership can be kind of fickle and change, and it does appear to be going back to road. And that matches up with better infrastructure too. I mean, just more bike lanes, more awareness of distracted driving. So I think those pieces play in. And then you mentioned innovation. Yeah, I think the industry looks to that, especially in these mature categories like road and mountain. Innovation is the thing that's going to drive sales, and there's just more and more of that coming out.
Yeah, yeah. So we've kind of talked about 2023 and we've started to dip into what's going on now, but are there any we've been really looking closely at, I think, data from December through February so far. Anything else we can kind of glean from that?
The piece that I really pay careful attention to is online traffic. So we look pretty closely at the Google search index data. What are consumers searching for and at what volume? And then how does that relate to site traffic? And Google's search volume is relatively comparable to last year, but there's been a significant uptick in site traffic over these last several months, like up 11% across the network. And so that's really promising going into the year. So I think any one of our customers will take flat in terms of sales, but consumer interest is the best indicator of sales potential. And based on traffic numbers, I'd say there's potential for some modest growth this year. So I think our customers can take some solace in that.
And across our clients, I mean, we expect the big ones to do well. Is that the case so far? And is that the only segment doing well, or are the smaller or medium-sized stores showing some signs of life too?
I think there's two truths in that. So, I think to the point you're getting at, the typical dealer in our network has turned the corner. So if there was a steady decline in the typical dealer's monthly sales through the bulk of 2023, that changed in that November to December period where monthly performance was starting to rise relative to last year for the typical. We measure typical by pulling out the outliers of the top performers because we think that gives a bad read. But when we isolate the top performers, their growth trajectory is significantly higher than the typical. So that's when I say both things are true. Everybody's rising, but we are seeing the top performers who make those heavy investments in expanded growth opportunities, especially through online advertising. They're the ones that are selling the most product right now. And there's something to be learned from them that there's no secret sauce there that isn't accessible to all retailers. But those are the dealers who tend to be taking the actions.
Yeah, and sometimes larger stores have an advantage around being able to invest in inventory, being able to do either do things that smaller dealers have trouble budgeting for, or just do more of it. What do we see there? We know they're investing in digital advertising, but what's the inventory looking like? We've seen a build of inventory in warehouses. What's that looking like on the ground for the typical retailer?
Well, I think typical from the dealers I talk to and from what the data shows and also what we're hearing from suppliers, the typical retailer's inventory is in a relatively healthy spot right now. That's not to say they don't have pockets that they paid a higher price for and now they can't get a full price, or it's a really competitive category and they can't quite sell through something that they have in stock. But on the whole, dealers started to make their adjustments to bike inventory much earlier than suppliers. We started to see dealer purchase orders getting canceled in May of 2022. There was a lag before suppliers recognized it and they started to cut back. So the majority of that bike inventory buildup at retail has worked its way through. I think 2023 was a big year in dealers selling down their aftermarket inventory as well and starting to lean more on suppliers from a just-in-time ordering standpoint. So whereas we certainly have some dealers who place some inventory bets, and and are heavy on bike inventory right now, that's not the story of the whole. And so there's a risk. I think some of the industry narratives are really overly focused on dealer overstock, and we just don't see that.
Yeah.
But there is the downside of dealers have running healthy inventories, and that lag in suppliers adjusting combined with the long lead times, especially in bike production, has led to a real backup at suppliers. And that's why you see some of the headlines you do about big, cutbacks at virtually all of the large companies right now, and a prolonged discounting period. I mean, some of the manufacturers have had steady, deep discounts for, well over 12 months, and there's no sign of that easing. And that's simply a factor of they've just got a big buildup of bike inventory that they have very few levers to pull in order to move through it, and discounting is one of them.
But as you said earlier, that's not all bad, because at retail, we're still seeing the dollar volume there. Maybe it changes which level of bike a consumer buys, but they're still in there buying, and that's a solid positive sign going forward.
Yeah, but price-based promotions, they perform a function in business. I mean, when they drive sales, that's an ideal scenario. When you do the promotions and they don't stimulate additional demand, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
And I think some of the uncertainty going into this year is, I think a positive from last year was the majority of the bikes that dealers were purchasing at wholesale were at wholesale discounts that lined up with the retail discounts. Mm-hmm. And so even if the margin dollars were a little lower, dealers were still able to make good margin as a percent. This year, there's a little bit more uncertainty because manufacturers may not have the same degree of flexibility about maintaining a retail price that lines up with the wholesale price. So there is a chance that dealers have some exposure to reduced margins on their own inventory. Compounded, like Susie brought up innovation earlier, as new products are coming out that can impact prices on existing inventory. And so I think this is going to be a year where dealers are going to need to pay pretty careful attention to their margins. My last conversation before this call was around margins, and the kind of intuitive action that many dealers take is around cost controls. If I control my costs, then I can operate my business on leaner margins for a year or two. But the flip side of that is sales growth, and that kind of comes back to the marketing component that maybe the larger dealers are doing right now. Mm-hmm. If you purely focus on cost controls, then you're only going to be able to participate on a certain amount of sales and at lower margins, even if you're just very persistent on cost controls, that limits your ability for profits. But if you pair disciplined business operations with effective marketing, you have the potential to grow your overall sales number, and then that puts more in your pocket at the end of the day. So that's something I really hope more dealers do going into the spring, is really know that you have to compete for the sales that are out there because everybody else is. Mm-hmm. If you allow yourself to be passive and just subject to the demand that's going to come your way in that broader competitive market, that's where I think some of your risks lie.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can't, I think the old saying in business, you can't cut your way to profitability. There's a floor to that. And I'll tell you, that lines up with, because we're one of those investment costs or one of those expenses that when somebody tightens mm-hmm. up, they will think about the money they're spending on marketing, the money they're spending on websites. I've been pretty surprised and pleasantly surprised lately when those conversations happen. They're not just happening on cut this. I mean, some do, but generally it's not cut this. It's, hey, I'm looking at this. What can I do to do a better job with that? I know this is an opportunity. So I've been encouraged by those conversations. It's not all about just cut. It's about, a lot of them are, what can I maybe invest more in? Because these cycles end. And if you come out of a time where it's cut, and that's all you've really tried to do for a year, an opportunity presents itself, there's always a lag to participate in that opportunity. And those that stay in the game participate in those more fully and much sooner. So it's good to hear that from a broader standpoint too.
So Mark, a question for you, because you arguably talk to more dealers than I do. What are you hearing around the expanded assortment capabilities that we bring to a dealer? In other words, you can sell Q or HLC's entire catalog without necessarily having to stock the items. that's always been what I consider a strong value proposition, especially in a market like this.
Yeah.
But what's the feedback loop? What are you hearing?
Today, post pandemic, that is a focus of a lot more dealers than it used to be. So it used to be, we built that technology over time. Some dealers adopted that technology, and to some, it was still hard to sell. They still wanted to. Well, I invest in the inventory. I want people to buy what I have. I think the pandemic taught retailers that didn't quite think that through all the way is that the consumers just have a lot of power at this point. And when there was nothing to sell, it was a little bit different because, well, there's nothing in the warehouses either. Well, now that that's changed again, this ability to invest in local inventory that you think is right for your market and be able to show and sell that broader inventory, that is appealing to a lot broader section of our dealer base than it used to. And it works really well. I mean, and we've added a few. Across the pandemic, we added a few more suppliers that are participating in what we call supplier fulfillment, drop shipping, that kind of stuff. So it makes a bigger difference across the breadth of our dealers rather than it just being to the ones that were early adopters of the technology.
Do you think that Google's choice to segment some of their shopping ads products is kind of contributing to some of the like growth in bike sales in particular? So Google split their product into the local shopping ads, which are what do you own? You can advertise non-shippable bike product versus the traditional shopping ads where you can do, you can market product that's available for drop ship at a supplier. Like, do you think that's serving our dealers well in this market?
I do, and I think it's probably contributing somewhat to the dollar sale, the value increase, because before, we had a lot of retailers that were into Google shopping ads before, but it was generally not including bikes just because they had to be shippable to be part of Google shopping. The minute the Google local inventory ads became accessible, then we added that to our technology that preps those files and that data for Google to consume. Now, all of a sudden, these higher ticket items, these local pickup only type things can be included in that. I think it's had a tremendous impact. And of course, we've seen amazing growth. I think we're up almost 110 merchants we're now managing Google ads for. And of course, we don't manage everybody's ads. So I think it's had a huge impact.
Yeah, and I love that it gives our local retailers, even just when you're searching as a consumer, ourselves, it gives them some space to be more competitive with some of the huge national retailers you think of that are primarily shipping, their products or things that are coming in those ads. So, yeah, I like it.
Or like in the bike space, if a company like Specialized does a tremendous amount of brand building and have invested so much in technology that consumers know they're interested in a Specialized bike. Well, Specialized also advertises direct to consumer. And so if the consumer searches for that product and the dealer shows up, right next to Specialized in the shopping results, I've got to think that there's a cycle there that's driving, traffic to retailers that wasn't necessarily there a year or two ago.
I think that's 100% true. And I think the other part of that is those shopping ads, years ago primarily were meant to and did a good job of creating direct sales. Somebody clicks the ad, they're through the shopping cart, they're buying the thing. I think now because we are including more bike inventory and because we're now entering, I don't even know how many, 10 years, 12 years of those little rectangular panels showing up at the top, they've now become, according to our Google team, a pretty big source of awareness. So particularly in a market like you said, maybe there's not a lot of local retailers advertising digitally in the market. You still see the Specialized ads or the larger. Well, that's not a bad thing. That means there's opportunity because Google wants to localize. Shoppers want to find things locally. So this opportunity to affordably get into that space does a couple things. It certainly should. We hope it does create some direct sales, but it also just puts you in that place where these high intent buyers are searching for things. And they're like, oh, I know where that store is. They may never touch that ad. They will show up in the store because of that ad, and that counts too.
Right.
I tell you what, those little blue pins, I think they are, that show nearby or in store. One of those, those are powerful for me. Yeah. bought a drill a couple of weeks ago, and to know that I was able to quickly cross shop between Home Depot and Harbor Freight and know that both the options I was looking at, I could just drive around the corner and get, just really powerful.
Yeah, I've been doing it with shoes lately. I have a hard time finding shoes. So,
Oh,
yeah.
You got some weird feet? Anyway, so I think
It's another topic. Yeah.
yeah, I also feel like the sun of the room I'm in is determining. I think it's time to kind of start wrapping this up. We've kind of gone through the numbers. We've had some ups and downs. What can retailers kind of take action on to make a positive impact on their sales?
Well, it's I am a marketer, so it should come of no surprise that I say that marketing is a key area to invest. But understand that this is probably going to be the most competitive marketing environment that you've operated in. The business cycle that started with the pandemic and is kind of working its way through. This phase of it is going to be very promotive, and take action to be in that space. And so the number one thing you can do is do those Google ads. If it's local to promote your bike inventory, that's fine. If you want to expand it to open up new opportunities, great. Whatever's right for you. And then make sure that you're tuned in with your email marketing, because a customer who bought from you is not guaranteed to buy from you with every purchase they have this year. But if you stay in front of them with regular reminders, pepper in discounts, but it doesn't have to be purely discounting, but stay top of mind. I really hope that more of our customers do that this year, so that they're not just blown around with the whims of the market, which is going to be dynamic, let's say.
Yeah, Susie, I think also, obviously we all lean marketing, but also just for workstand clients, use that supplier inventory connection to leverage those warehouses in a couple ways. Sell out of them for sure, but also, the third or fourth time you sell a thing that's in the warehouse, that's a great indicator that maybe that should be something you invest in locally. So it can help rebalance the inventory. If there's some older stuff sitting in the store, let us help you sell that via marketing, but also pay attention to what's being asked for so you can convert those sales more quickly. So use the technology that's available. And if you're not currently a workstand client, we'd love to have you.
Yeah,
We would absolutely love to have you.
Yeah.
Yes, you get to chat with us. But yes, I always want to come back to email marketing is the most kind of like get the best bang for your buck. We can include some stats on the kind of like the average return on investment. So, like every time you send an email, this is what you could be shooting for and the results that you can see. It's an amazing tool to get in front of the most number of people with a targeted message. But also if you're a workstand retailer, there's so many options to kind of maximize your dollars spent. So, for example, if you were going to invest in like our maintenance subscription. So not only would you have someone helping maintain your website, making sure all your e-com settings are, dialed in, best practices, all that good stuff. They're also going to keep your website seasonally relevant. So that's a big marketing piece. And now that package includes email graphics that match our complimentary library topics. So really great value, kind of checks a lot of boxes, but there's things like that. We can kind of chat about what works best for your business and how to make the most of our marketing offerings.
I would add to that, Susie, the work that we do with suppliers, like what we call our partner pages, where if a supplier is launching a new product or they have a promotion, they pay to create marketing content, and then oftentimes will pay to install it on your website. So leverage those big national advertisers, and that's something that is totally unique with Workstand. Is the depth of the partnerships we have with your most important suppliers.
Yeah, those, I can't talk about how great those are, whether it's a product release, right now we're going through a product release with Specialized. I'm trying not to buy a bike.
Which you find very compelling.
Yeah, I find it very compelling. It sounds, yeah. But that's my life. But also, I mean, national news sales. We have some really great kind of more evergreen content available too from our supplier partners. Like there is for example, there's like a specialized mountain bikes landing page content. Like, so there's lots of stuff, some really great content from Gazelle. It's not, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but just let us know if you're looking for something. We can help you.
Yeah. And this, Brian, this has been fun and informative and a broader discussion than Susie and I can have alone. So I hope we get to do this at least once a month. And for everybody that has questions, ask them in the comments. And if it's a question you don't feel comfortable with in the comments, then email it to podcast@workstand.com. All three of us will watch that email address. We'll read every email, read every question, and hopefully get it answered next time you join next month, Ryan, if that's okay with you.
That would be great. Love hanging out with you guys.
Awesome. Well,
thanks again. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. And next time we'll see you around the work stand.
Wonderful. See you soon.